Well, welcome back, everybody. We've got a very exciting panel coming up next. This is the competitive advantage of investing in diversity and inclusion, even in times of uncertainty. And Liza Weisner, Senior DE and I Curation Specialist from Open Sesame, is going to moderate the panel. So I'm going to turn it over to her now.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I hope everybody is having an amazing CLO exchange. I know I am, and I can't wait to go back and watch some of those sessions that I missed. But I'm most excited about this session because you get to hear from a group of experts who have really and truly taken diversity, equity, and inclusion into their work. And so as a chief learning officer, as a learning practitioner, I hope you will engage with us today in the discussion in learning more about how DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, can be the equation that takes your company to the next level. At Open Sesame, we are dedicated to developing the world's most productive and admired workforces. And for me personally, I feel like my job is really and truly to build a case of why diversity and inclusion in the workplace is about driving improved business performance. And so as we get started with our presentation today, I'm going to be introducing our amazing panelists, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and let us know where they're joining from and what DEI strategy looks like in their organization. And while I do that, I want to hear from you as well. So I want you to get into the discussion forum and share with us, who are you? What is your role as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion in your organization? And how can you help build this community of learners who want to learn more about DE&I? So let's get started with our panelists. We're going to start with Kathy Smith. Kathy is the Vice President of Talent Management and Development for Nationwide. Welcome, Kathy.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the introduction. Do you want us to comment?
Yeah, tell us what the DE&I strategy looks like at Nationwide.
Fantastic, thank you. So it's very holistic. It's been long-standing. Nationwide has been really invested in this space as a leader for a long time. I worked at another Fortune 100 company here in Columbus before working for Nationwide over 15 years ago. And we brought in many of their senior executives to help us lean in more aggressively into this space in that time frame. So you can imagine it's a very strong cultural strength. And learning, I lead talent management and development. Learning is a huge part of the DE&I strategy, but it's also a strategy that is really effective. And so that's one thing I love about Nationwide is that we really approach things with an analytical problem solving, we're going to win at this type of approach.
I love that. I love that. I heard win at this, I heard holistic, and I heard lean in, and I absolutely love that. So welcome, Kathy, and we look forward to learning more. Our next panelist is David Hare, who is the Director of Enterprise Learning and Development for GE Appliances. Welcome, David.
You know, you think you'd have this down by now as far as mute buttons, but thank you very much. And I don't know if I can match your energy, so I'm just going to feed off that energy and just say this, what an honor and privilege it is to be here to talk about such a vital topic. And again, located in Louisville, Kentucky, that's where home is for GE Appliances. And this is something, we're on a journey. Right. And it's something at which we have learned over time, just the value and the importance. And what I want to say is for us, we have a long-standing kind of organic movement around those efforts, especially with our affinity groups within the organization. I've been with GE Appliances now for 2 years. And after about 90 days to 6 months, I went to my boss and I said, we're not the learning organization. I said, our affinity groups are the learning organization. And it's amazing how from an organic standpoint that group has continued to help the organization learn. I mean, I once heard something recently in which I think it was from Liz Wiseman, who said, you know, you once heard knowledge is power, but I think learning is the new power, right? And what I want to say is within our organization, that is an intentional focus, is how do we strengthen the ability for us to learn about, and what we do is we call it I&D. And the reason why we call it I&D is we feel that you have to build the inclusive environment for diversity to flourish. And so we put that intentionally at the forefront. I partner very closely with our I&D leader, AJ Hubbard, who's an amazing human being, but just a great leader. And that's something at which we're focused on the intentionality. We have not only the executive support, but it's something at which we're committed to really seeing us move, not only within the organization, but the community at which we're a part of. So the last thing I want to say is it's not only a matter of what we're doing inside of GE Appliances, but we're in the school systems in the cities at which we operate and ensuring that we can build that up throughout our communities.
I love it. Oh, in fact, if we could drop the mic, you could drop it right now. That was fantastic. I love what you said. I felt like you just did a session in this short time. So thank you so much for introducing yourself. And we're glad you're here, David. Next, we have Nikki Odom. And Nikki is the Director of Diversity and Inclusion at Nestle. Welcome, Nikki. Tell us, what does DE&I look like in your organization?
Well, again, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this panel. I am super excited to have such commonality with my peers and my partners who are also on the panel. For me, I right now have the privilege of being sort of in a dual role in which I'm leading learning and development for a part of our organization and taking on diversity and inclusion. And I'll tell you that Nestle is a great place to work. Let's start there. The culture is thriving and is flourishing. And in large part is because our commitment to DE&I is embedded into the fabric of what we do. So when I think about the journey that we're also on, and I think, David, you mentioned that it is a journey, certainly this year, DE&I has been a focus, a primary focus for all of us. But when I think about how we break down our commitments, one of the things that I think is important that we do well at Nestle is we drive toward clarity. You talk about DE&I not just being about feeling good, but it adds value back to the business. And so we're able to share with our employees how we drive accountability with leadership, how we enhance our learning and development through our DE&I strategy, how we engage our employees and our talent, and then the partnerships that we have in the community. So I think a holistic approach is needed, as Kathy, as you mentioned, and we have an amazing groundswell of employees. Our employees understand the importance of DE&I, which makes it that much easier for our leaders who have to be champions, right? We have to create the right environment, the right climate. That's a beautiful partnership. So do we have progress that needs to be made? Of course. But I think to David's point and yours, Kathy, this is something that we strive for every day. We are committed to creating an inclusive environment, an environment of belonging, and making sure that our employees feel like they can contribute at their absolute best. So when COVIDs happen, when hurricanes happen, when racial tensions are arising, people understand where we are in the organization. Our competitive advantage is our employees first. Everything else is centered around that. So it's just a privilege to be here today.
Ooh, I love it. Wow, Nikki. And so now I know why I need to go watch your session you did this morning as a keynote, because that energy and that excitement towards really seeing DE&I as that strategic arm, right? That strategic lever to empower the organization to move forward is really the key, right? And I heard you say that you drive towards clarity. I love that. You have a vision and you're moving in that direction. Now, for me personally, as a mom of 3 boys here in my home, it brings me great joy to know that these household name companies are doing this amazing work. And so I want to congratulate you all for being here with us today. But let's get started with the tough questions, okay? Today, we're going to move beyond just talking about DE&I, and we're going to talk about operationalizing it. So my very first question for you is, why is it important for an organization like yours to make DE&I part of your learning leaders initiatives? And not just making it important, but how, right? How can we develop this learner leader effect, make it meaningful, and create some sustainable equity within the workforce? How can we do this? And maybe David, do you want to get us started with this?
Sure. Thank you very much. And again, this is one of those areas at which I think is so critical for organizations, is to understand that it takes an element of educating a population. And I have to say one thing here real quick. Whenever I told my kids what I was going to talk about today, they kind of looked at me and said, Dad, you're a guy. Right. And you know, one of the things is there has to be education, because I can't experience what you experience. I can't. And so what I have to do is I have to understand, and I have to know, and part of the education is listening, right? And so it is teaching our leaders to listen, teaching our leaders to, and I love the way you said it earlier, Kathy, as far as leaning in, right? We have to be able to lean in, learn. And so that's one element. But the other piece too is I think education is the pathway for us to strengthen the diversity in the organization all the way up and down the line. And so what we've done is we've built that into our structured programs. So we have self-enroll programs, we have structured programs, and our digital programs. And the way I like to say it is this, is we are looking to build an inclusive learning environment where you not only get to determine what you want to learn, but how you want to learn it. And so giving people an opportunity to be the authors of their story, because that's what works best for them. That's one of the ways we build that. Now, what does that mean for us? Our numbers of people attending our self-enrollment and our selected programs is 30% higher than our general population, right? So we are really pushing those targets so that we can strengthen the capabilities and ability for people to be able to promote up, because that's going to be the way at which we'll make a difference, is teaching people to learn, giving them the knowledge, the capabilities, but then being able to promote. And we do that through something we call I&D councils. We have I&D councils throughout the organization that are a part of the talent review process, focused on I&D efforts, right? And it is ensuring that those individuals that have been identified are targeted towards the selected programs and the self-enrollment programs. Again, I just got off of a call with my HR team, and I said, no one ever drifts their way to greatness. There has to be intentional, focused effort. And so it's the same in this category. You're not going to get there organically unless there's intentional effort. And that's what we're doing.
Woo! Wow, David, that was truly amazing. I mean, I really feel like you kind of captured it all. I mean, creating this results-oriented culture, right? So you are actually measuring. I like that you mentioned some metrics that you measure, right, in terms of promotion, and then also making sure that there's that I&D culture that you mentioned. But I mean, does anybody else on the panel want to chime in terms of how they are operationalizing DE&I in terms of measurement? How are you doing that?
Oh, I'm glad to chime in here. I think that, accountability measurement is a big form of accountability, and we definitely are leaning into that. Part of that is a way that we measure all associates, right, is that we do have a performance goal for every level of the organization around contributing to our culture, and inclusion and DE and I are all part of that objective. So we do give people a call to action, and then we give them a whole lot of ways to engage. And just like David mentioned, our learning strategy is very holistic. So there are a lot of hands-on ways that we give people to engage, in addition to ideas and concepts. We have, right, obviously associate resource groups, I know, is a big part of all of our organizations, and we consult with them from a learning perspective to kind of pull through ideas and conversations that we want to help engage the whole enterprise in. So associates can lead through those. We had a social justice task force established this year, which was a tremendous leadership opportunity to really analyze, learn together, make recommendations to senior leadership. And that's an ongoing initiative for us now, in addition to the D&I councils and those types of vehicles that we've had where associates can engage. So we're adding on, building on, and constantly looking for these opportunities for associates to not just participate in something, but to make an impact.
But I don't know, let's now shift gears a little bit and talk about allyship, right? So how do we engage the community, right? So how do we engage allies who are not necessarily part of the group, but are wanting to support the group? How do we engage allies in the workplace, both in senior leadership and amongst employees?
Do you want to take it, Nikki?
I'll start. I'll start
Sure.
with allyship, because for us, it's been a tremendous focus for us, and which has been highlighted this year, especially since the death of George Floyd and some of the other unfortunate incidences that we have seen across our nation that we've responded to. But I'll share this with you. I'm sure all of us have had listening sessions, right? We've all had listening sessions. We want to understand the pulse. We want to serve our employees with empathy and create those environments of vulnerability. And when we've given our employees the opportunity to extend grace to one another, that's where allyship really started to come alive even more than before. The partnerships between the employee resource groups did a couple of things for us. It broke down barriers. And then it made us understand how reaching out, each one reach one, really can exponentially enable employees to take that one extra step. Because from our standpoint, leaders in large part are accountable for the environments that we create, but leaders are employees as well. So we gave them the space to be vulnerable and to have those conversations with their employees, which in touch strengthened the connection that we needed to have in order to create that environment of inclusion. And then we leveraged our ERGs. We equipped them with skill building. David, I love how you said you've incorporated learning. We have used our employee resource groups, the leadership within those groups, we've skilled them up also in the area of allyship. What does it mean? How do you communicate? How do we partner with our HR business partners and our leaders to help them understand what that really means to be an effective ally? Because you don't have to be a Black American to understand to be an ally for the Black experience. I don't have to be a able-bodied American in order to be an ally to partner with them. And so we really leverage their input to build allyship. And then of course our partnerships, our external organizations have been incredibly important, because we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We've got some amazing partnerships with folks outside of our organization who do it really well and could help us close gaps with speed. And so I think taking that internal and external approach has really enabled us to not sort of fall off the rails. Because one of the things that I'm really incredibly proud of our organization about is when the unfortunate incidences across America happened, Nestle didn't have to all of a sudden come up with a plan, because DE&I is a part of our fabric. Now, did we have to extend maybe a little quicker in some areas? Of course we did, but we were able to stay true to our true north. And so allyship has been a big part of that, and really educating our employees and our leaders on what that means in terms of being effective and being able to reach into spaces that you may not have a common experience with has been incredibly important for us.
I love hearing that. And I thought, David, you kind of touched on that. You talked about the fact that I love how you said, and I feel like I'm taking notes, like I'm learning so much from y'all, and it just feels like I am like getting so much out of this. But David, you really did talk about how your learning environment is no more, like you're not the learning organization anymore. Like your employees, your groups, your councils, they're the ones leading the change. I love that. I loved hearing that.
Absolutely. And that's, it rings so true a little bit what you're saying there, Nikki, in terms of, it wasn't something that we had to go out and invent, right? It was something that we leaned into the groups that were already doing it. And that's a part of the affinity groups, right? And I think of the affinity groups that I'm a part of within the organization, our African American Forum, our Women in Leadership, right? Our Hispanic Forum. Those are groups that I'm a part of, right? And so it is something at which we have an opportunity to leverage that to build allyship is one. Two is this: it's important that organizations provide a platform so that those organizations can speak to the broader company. So example for that is this: when all of this shifted, we created a program called Rise. And, we created the program off of Maya Angelou's poem, Still I Rise, because we knew that we were going to emerge out of COVID stronger, more capable, And so what we began to have were just talking sessions. These were our talks at which I would host somebody on, maybe somebody out there like to be a part of a rise coming up here in 2021. But just like we're doing here, and what we begin to do is to give our different affinity groups that forum to speak to the entire organization. So they had the entire platform at which they could build allyship across the company. And I think giving people a voice so that it can be heard and we can be passionate around it, that's one of the ways we develop stronger allyship.
I love that. And you know, I just feel like as a learning practitioner that we didn't define the word ally. So if you don't mind, I very quickly went and looked it up because there may be people watching right now who just, we may be talking about ally and they're like, what is that? What does that actually mean? And I know you can ask Alexa, but I'm going to tell you that today's word that we're using is ally, and we're using it as a noun, and it's one who provides assistance and support in an ongoing effort, activity, or struggle. And so you've heard us talking about it in terms of an ally being a support. So even though, you know, David is in the Women in Leadership group as an ally to women in leadership, right, David?
Yes, absolutely.
So ally, you could be a collaborator, you could be a helper, you could be a friend. So pretty much, I guess, advocating for underrepresented or marginalized groups. And that's the goal here. We're looking for that relationship within our organizations. But isn't that the point anyway, right? The point is that I see you, you see me, and I'm here to support you. And I'm here to make sure that you're seen just like I'm being seen, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so we can swiftly move on to the next question, which is, what role does personal accountability play in creating sustainable equity in the workplace? And how can we encourage personal accountability amongst our workforce? And I know, Kathy, this is something that you're always harping on in terms of, you know, you have to put their feet to the fire, right? You said you were gonna, like, you know, your words must match the action. So tell us more about how you are doing this at Nationwide.
Want to make hot? I've done. Sorry.
Can you hear me, Kathy?
Am I unmuted?
No, you're good.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, fine. Okay, thank you. So, you know, I love this conversation. I think they all build on each other. Part of personal accountability, again, we talked about, we incorporate it into goals and we create the opportunities to engage, and we give people thoughtful asks, just like my peers mentioned around, you know, listening sessions, and we create environments by bringing in speakers on a variety of topics to make it safer to lean into conversations we might not otherwise, right? So that's personal accountability from every associate really matters. The way this relates to around kind of creating personal accountability at every level around metrics is this. I love where you went, Nikki, with outside in thinking. Outside in thinking has been a critical part about how we measure our success. And we have some of the traditional ways we've done that with partners like Catalyst, who we had like a 10-year partnership to learn from them over 10 years around our commitment to advancing women. We did different experiments and pilots together to see what kinds of things might help us break through, you know, and then, you know, we did end up being recognized by them, but it was a 10-year journey. It was a big commitment, lots of learning, and big accountability that your CEO has to engage, right? So it's real engagement. And the other thing we've learned, particularly this year, is do we have all the right metrics? We have a lot of the classics around the advancement, you know, of different demographic groups and what's happening around career movement and who's getting different learning opportunities and exposure opportunities. Because we track those things down to a granular level from, you know, every sponsor, every visible sponsorship opportunity. But what we weren't tracking quite to the depth we would want to, again, is what's happening in our communities and what kinds of metrics are we going to commit to there. And that's been a bigger shift this year.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Go ahead, Nikki.
I was going to build on what you said, Kathy, in terms of the community, because we've seen that's an area of importance for our employees as well. And as we've began to elevate the voices of our employee resource groups, one of the things that we also took on is we looked at where were we investing in creating volunteer opportunities within the community, where were we investing our funds, and we used our employee resource groups as channels to help us to sort of reevaluate reevaluate and redefine what those partnerships could look like and why this year. That has been a huge lift for us. And then in full transparency and vulnerability, one of the things that we also learned in our listening sessions is that our employees, although unconscious bias training has occurred, we needed still to work on eliminating the stigma. And our employees said, we want to be better equipped as employees to understand the cues, to really know how do we act courageously in this space. So we had to go back this year and sort of revamp what that looks like. How do we build a journey so that it's not a one and done and a flavor of the month? And so I just wanted to build on some of the things that you said, because that personal accountability, giving our employees the space to have a voice and then seeing that some of those things are acted upon have been really beneficial for us. And the last thing that I'll say is we've created what we call open channel. And that's where our employees have an opportunity to give a pitch to our executive leadership team on new products, new ideas, innovation, and inclusive marketing has been one of the areas of focus coming out of that open channel experience. So talk about DE&I, being able to really allow our employees to impact and affect the business bottom line as well in the midst of everything that's going on. I stand with you in saying that we've seen some adjustments that we've had to make this year, and that personal accountability has really been one of our drivers.
Fantastic. And we actually do have a question that's related to this. And, because I think anytime we talk about accountability, it starts from the top, right? And so the question is from Amy Ryan, and she asks, tell me about how your CEO and C-suite play in your strategic plan. So in your strategy, how does your CEO, how do you create, I guess you could say, value towards DE&I work? And it sounds like, David, you have an answer for us.
Yeah, so a couple different things. One is our CEO, Kevin Nolan, meets with our I&D leader, AJ, on a consistent basis and is at the forefront of whether it's videos, events, situations, circumstances. He's bringing the speakers in and wanting to have the dialogue. Two is our CEO takes a stance out in the community. I mentioned earlier that for us, this is not just about what's happening inside the organization, but it is going to the underserved community and the schools where education is existing. And that was just a press release earlier this week where we're investing money in the schools that are underserved. And even one of the schools is a high school in town. We have created a mock manufacturing facility inside that school for that group to be able to learn. So it's not just about what you're saying, but it's what you're doing and what you're investing. And so our goal is to make that something that's real, even at younger levels. So that's where I think our CEO is tightly aligned, is not only what's happening inside, but is investing the money outside the organization within the community.
Mm-hmm. Touching on all stakeholders of the organization, right? And I think that's sort of like what Nikki has touched on also, right? I think everybody's on the same page on this, and I absolutely love it. It's the whole holistic view of DE&I, not just you and your employees. It's about everyone you're touching, your suppliers even, right? Everyone being brought to the fold to understand what the values are within the organization and how it plays a part in their success as well.
Right.
So, we do have another question that kind of fits into this as well. So instead of waiting for Q&A, I feel like I should just bring in these questions. And so we have Beth, who actually just asked a question about maintaining engagement in ERGs, in these affinity groups we're talking about. So how do you, in your organizations, how are you maintaining engagement in ERGs in a virtual environment, right? We are tasked with doing business during this pandemic, during this social distancing time. How are you engaging your ERGs?
So glad to talk to that. We are all very fortunate around technology, right? And our ARGs have, they are very large, just like I'm sure they are at both Nestle and GE. And we have very committed structures of associates that lead these. So they put out, they've been really pivoting and creating those forums for associates to engage and create two-way dialogue. So they're doing that through events, both big and intimate, So we have almost weekly kind of coffee chats people can engage in, and mentoring circles, but also more insight-based events where they hear from panels of leaders. There is a ton of activity because all of that takes orchestration. That happened before, but the frequency with which it's happening now, because we are remote and we're trying to create more connection opportunities, is really large. But in addition to that, we've done some really broad campaigns to just try to create more opportunities for people to connect. And the ARGs are leveraging those too. So things like simple ideas around mentoring structures that don't require a lot of matching. Pick 2 people, meet with them 3 times on a development area, go. So, you know, sometimes we can over-engineer things in our world, but we're trying to come out with these really simple ways to give people permission to engage again. So.
I love that. And, you know, sometimes the simple way is the right way, right? So I love how you said that, you know, just giving people room to, and I like how you said the coaching sessions, because that's room for people to have feedback, room to make mistakes, right? Say the wrong thing and feel like, oh, I can learn from this and grow from this. So, I really liked hearing what you said. So I think we may be coming to the top of the hour, and because I want to leave some time for people to ask questions, I'm going to ask you a question that's related to what's going on right now. So I know we all know this, but 2020 is unlike any other year we've probably ever had in our lifetime. So let's call it the perfect storm with the pandemic, the swell of social unrest, and the divisive, you know, geopolitical climate that we've had. You know, it's really been disruptive, and it's come into our workforces. No matter how much we try to think, oh, it doesn't affect us, it really does. So my question for you all is, how has this perfect storm disrupted your organization or supported your organization in your DE&I efforts? And what is maybe a key takeaway in terms of how to see, you know, this situation of a pandemic being a positive, right? How can, as learning leaders, how can we be resilient and see the unrest as something that is a positive towards our success? How can we accelerate the DE&I mission? So Nikki, do you want to get us started?
Okay. Okay, sure. I would say how I would answer this question is probably twofold. First, in terms of disruption, I think because we are all human, we are all we are all employees, and we all know someone or independently have been affected by what has been happening, you know, in the world that we live in. From a disruption standpoint, we have all had to take an internal look at ourselves and how we want to show up. And so within the organization, it's incredibly important to make sure that we had the empathy to allow that journey, that internal journey, to happen. And so although disruptive, we still created a safe place for our employees to land. Which leads me to the second part of that. And you said, what has been the benefit, or what have we learned from this? Because Nestle is global, a global organization, I've really seen not only the DE&I group within the US rally around each other and our leaders in terms of how we have a unified approach to what we do organically. I've also seen my partners around the world reach out and extend the same. Our concerns may be slightly different, but it's how can I help? How can I be an ally in Turkey or in the middle? You know, it has just been an incredible journey to walk through as a global D&I team. When I tell you the human experience really has helped us to understand that at the end of the day at Nestle, we feed people, right? And it's incredibly important to make sure that we keep that in mind. I love the simplicity that I think, Kathy, you expressed. We try to keep it simple, especially in times of disruption. How do we get down to the basic fundamental things that are important to us? And so not being incredibly rocked off of our rocker by everything that has happened, but really digging deeper and allowing our employees to activate in the community. allowing our leaders to connect one-on-one differently. The listening sessions have been incredibly important, giving our employee resource groups the venue and the opportunity to say, here's what matters. Our 4 pillars around DE&I, 12 actions have come because our employee resource groups understood the pulse of our employees and provided recommendations to our C-suite, which we have now implemented and put in place. And so I think it's just coming back to who we are, what our values and our purpose has been, has really enabled us to continue on this journey. And it truly is a journey.
I love it. David, do you want to chime in a little bit on that?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that come to mind. You know, when we say disrupt, it was something at which what we saw was this. It gave us an opportunity to learn, right? And what I will say is, and we took full advantage of that in order for us to understand it. And quite honestly, one of the things that we did, we went through a history lesson. And we went through a history lesson that maybe some of us had never read, but everybody else had experienced. That was a real moment at which things pivoted and changed, right? So that's one. 2 was this. It brought an opportunity for us to say, I'm not okay is okay, right? It's okay not to be okay. And we'll continue to stand side by side together, because, you know, it brought an opportunity for us to unite in a way that we hadn't before, in a way that wish we would have, but in a way at which we have a united front moving forward, right? We're on a journey. We're not where we need to be. We may not get there tomorrow, but we won't stop. So I think that's part of the disruption, is it lights a fire to say, we won't stop. And we have a mission to make this better. So I think that's part of what that does for us.
Well said.
Yes. Oh my goodness, David. Okay. And Kathy, do you want to just let us know a little bit about maybe at Nationwide, what this means to you? What is this pandemic and this 2020, as we call it, what does it mean to you?
Oh, I think it reignited some things that we had been doing and kind of doubled down on. About 2 years ago, we started a Catalyst for Change experience where our C-suite toured the country. And we were holding, David, exactly the kind of conversations you're talking about, which is giving people context around equity and what's going on in our communities and what are the roots of that. And they were leading the conversation. And so we did that. And then so this year, obviously remotely, it became a great opportunity to build on that. But what I thought was so much more powerful actually this year was how much vulnerability they personally showed in this year around, and they made mistakes, right? They got feedback. People didn't like how something was said or what something was missing from what they said. And they quickly responded. There's something about the speed of communication this year that showed so much more humanity, so much more authenticity and vulnerability, and made things feel just so much, again, safer for everyone to engage in this dialogue.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh, I love how you said that. I mean, I feel like as you were going, Kathy, I was just like, yes, 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 yes. Oh, you know, it almost feels like I feel like almost like, we're all L&D practitioners, right? So let's just, get the elephant out of the room. We all have work to do, right? And our customers are our employees, right? And our community that we serve. This is hard work to justify the work we do. It's actually sometimes feels like you're climbing some unimaginable mountains and pulling superpowers from who knows where to make it all happen. But I feel like the pandemic made the rubber meet the road. It was almost like, what are we gonna do? And we're like, we've been telling you this all the time. We've been telling you this. So yeah, I love hearing the insight that you all presented in terms of how this pandemic is a positive. It is an opportunity for us to become successful. So just, in closing, I just want to give you all an opportunity to just share a takeaway with everybody so that we can be respectful of everyone's time. Maybe could you share maybe one practical piece of advice, maybe one concrete step that any DE&I practitioner could take in their organization today? And I'm going to start with Kathy.
If you're struggling with senior level engagement or sponsorship, I think one of the most successful things we did was bring in an external partner like a Catalyst who walks with you side by side with your leadership team and can bring them along. That'd be one big tip.
And when you said Catalyst, I think you won the Catalyst Award, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So you pretty much nailed it. You know, you're a good student.
One of the highlights of my career, truly.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations. What that means is that you're putting yourself against the best and you're holding yourself accountable to benchmark and create a best practices environment, right?
And so real progress. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And we really, truly appreciate you. And David, do you want to lead us next into a final thought?
Yeah. So, you know, this is one of those interesting areas in which, you know, a personal passion is around this that I think organizations should look at here. And that is, you know, I don't think that people should practice in inclusion. They should be inclusive, right? It's a state of being and becoming, not just a practice that you do. And so when we teach this, it's about what are you becoming? And are you becoming an inclusive leader that just kind of comes from in and around you? So what I would say is, as we are teaching and building, it's something about building people that become more inclusive and not just simply going through the motions of practice. And so that's because I think it's more important for us to make an impact and an impression. And so let's go out and do something like that. That's what I think we have the ability to do within and outside of our organizations.
I love it. I love it. You're making GE sound like the best place to work because David works there. So yes, it's fantastic. And I think you have like the most quotable answers. I love it. I'm writing down all these quotes about you, David. So thank you so much for joining us today. And Nikki, do you have any final thoughts for us?
I think my final thought would be this, and it goes back to the individual personal accountability. We are definitely on a journey, and recognize that as an individual employee, you were not the same 5 years ago that you are today. So continue to be courageous and leverage the power of one that's within you. When you partner with someone who is willing to be courageous or willing to act or willing to do something different, and you join that with someone of influence who has the equal passion, that becomes an accelerator for us within the group. So don't forget that one individual can make a difference in this journey that we're on, and why not be the change you want to see?
Wow. Oh my goodness. Okay, so if the chat is not blowing up right now with people going, yes, 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 I needed to. So if you are watching right now, please give some affirmation and some gratitude for the guests who were with us today, because they have poured from their hearts, they have shared from their organizations on what truly diversity and inclusion means. And so thank you so much, our guests, for being with us today. And just in closing, man, I have like pages of quotes, but there's one quote that comes to mind, which is, you didn't come this far to only come this far. So for those of you who are watching right now, and maybe your DE&I journey, your diversity, equity, and inclusion journey was this session, right? You probably had not even thought about it, like being the champion of it, right? Nobody has to give you the title. You can just be the champion. And like Nikki said, start small, and the compound effect of that is just exponential, and just 1% plus one every day towards your DE&I success. That's really all we're looking for, is for you to just step up and say, yes, I want to be part of the conversation. And you will be surprised where you will be a year, 2 years from now, just 1% incremental success in your career. So I'm just excited because I feel like we had a great panel, and I know that the CLO Exchange continues, but I just want to thank you so much for being with us today. I want to thank you, Nikki, for sharing. Today you've had a very busy day here, so thank you so much for sharing with us and being on this panel. David, wow, thank you so much. So many quotable things. There is one quote that I didn't finish writing. It said, no one ever drifts their way to what? I didn't write down
greatness.
To greatness. I love that. So you're definitely a quotable speaker. So appreciate getting to meet you, and I look forward to connecting with you further. And Kathy, oh my goodness, you know, I absolutely love everything you shared. You're all about accountability and measurement. And to me, what gets measured gets done. And so I thank you all for being with us today. And with that, I want to bring it back to the CLO group. Maybe Jenna, do you want to come back on and let us know whether we have any other questions that I may have missed? let's see if we have anybody. Doesn't look like we have any questions in the panel. So I guess we can end the session. Do we want to end the session, everybody?
Sure.
I'm not
Thank
sure
you
if I
all
can
so
end the
much.
session. I'm trying to figure out how to end the session, but I don't think I can. I think
That's
we
right.
have to wait for somebody.
Yep, we are good to go, guys. Thank you so much for a great presentation. And everyone, you can move back to the timeline and head into our next presentations.
Okay,
Awesome.
don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Let's take a picture. I'm gonna do
Absolutely.
a screenshot. Okay, hold on. Let me do a screenshot. Oh, there's a whole bunch of people there, so it's awesome. So if you want to be in the picture, bring your camera on. Okay, 1, 2, 3, say cheese. Love it. Okay, it was a pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Bye.
Bye.